Beginning today with 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3 through 5. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. I want to pause on that for just a moment and just reflect back, because if God has given us the ability, and one of our weapons that are mighty through God allows us to pull down strongholds, then certainly in our lives there is, in the not too distant past, somewhere where we have taken a stronghold down. And your first reaction might be, well, I really don't remember facing a stronghold. And I don't remember being in a bloody, messy battlefield. But the thing about strongholds, when we truly identify them, it's just situations in our life that become an obstacle. They hold us in place. They may keep us from progressing. They might be it might be a relationship on a job. It could be circumstances that arise from a financial difficulty. It can just go on and on. There's no real definition of where a stronghold can be. And I think it's important for us to know that not everything that we do is going to have an obvious spiritual connection. And a stronghold does not have to be something spiritual. It's just something that holds you. It keeps you back. It's something that stops progress. And I think when we can understand it in that context, that we are able to conquer or push through these strongholds, we must know that there are probably more strongholds in our life than we recognize. And it may be something as simple as labeling the stronghold. We might have put it in the category of a tough day at the job, or a conflict with a coworker, some financial things that came against us we weren't prepared for. But when we think about what a stronghold does, it becomes a limitation in our life. It's something that limits us. And, we truly are created to be mighty, but mighty through God. Mighty in our own rights is, questionable what that could be for any individual. But it's when we begin to break these scriptures down and hold them up in front of us in a mirror and say, well, does this fit me? Is it my size? And sometimes we may see that. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Our weapons are spiritual, but we can be held back and involved in strongholds that might have a different title to it, or a different color to it, to where we have mislabeled it. But our power is mighty through God to the taking down of these limitations in our life. And the first thing we have to do to try to identify a stronghold is to look around and see, where is it in our world that we're being limited? And if you're looking around and you're saying, well, I'm unlimited, I don't have limits, that would be a great thing. But I think all of us could probably agree that we have all been limited at some point, limited to the point of frustration. We could have been limited in our prayer life. We could be limited in our faith, limited in our successes. And when we can look around and find limits, find where we have stopped. We might have stopped praying for a person, stopped asking God to lead us in a particular direction, and something distracted us. A situation in the home caused us to reset. And when we begin to go forward again, well, we might have forgot that we had been in a battlefield and we were ready to win a victory, but then something came up. But it says in verse 5 in 2 Corinthians 10, casting down arguments. We're able to cast down arguments. In other words, conflicts. Conflicts that don't always have resolutions, but perhaps sometimes conflicts that do. But our weapons are casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. There's a detail here that we can miss, and we can skip over it, and we do it to our detriment, I think. But think about the wording of this: casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. The one, I could say, weapon in the enemy's hand, and a circumstance that can even come against us, whether it's the enemy or not, is our knowledge of God. What we know about God, it exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And the things we know about God is where we're going to win our victories. When we can be stretched out and recognize that God can help us in situations we may not have given him an invitation to in the past. But he's able to help us in every situation in our life. Everything that you face on your job, everything you face in your internal inquiries, when you stand before a mirror, when you say, as David did, search me, Lord, and know me, and see if there's any wicked way in me. When we faithfully and truly pray those prayers, we're opening ourselves up and we're saying, God, just go ahead and look up and down and left and right and see if there's something in me that you could fix today. Because, I might have a little bit of myopia and maybe I'm not seeing clearly. Both eyes may not be open. I need to see myself, Lord, truly. And I need to see where my flaws are so that I can begin to work on them. And being able to have the knowledge of God, that's the knowledge of what God can do now, what he can do in this day right now. And I may not know it right now. And so I need to say, Lord, help me to bring down the argument that exalts itself against what I know about you. Give me peace and understanding that I can understand what God is able to do right now. And then this right here, this is good. Bringing every thought into captivity. Every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Here is where many battles are won or lost. Every thought. Do you realize that every temptation begins with a thought? Every detail in our life has somewhere, it's born of a thought. And every failure begins with a thought. We talk about David and Bathsheba, but that sad chapter in his life, it began with a thought. The time when kings go forth to battle, David remained in his house. It wasn't that he forgot the battle. It wasn't that he got his calendar wrong and they left and he stayed. No, it was an unusual thing. But it started with a thought. And it's our thoughts that we have to control. It's our thoughts that we have to manage, because every thought needs to be brought into obedience of Christ. We can wound ourselves. We can take ourselves totally out of the battlefield. We can take ourselves out of the fight by our thoughts. And our thoughts must be brought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. which simply means I must line up my thoughts in such a way that the end result of my thinking, the end result of this idea means that Jesus Christ is going to be glorified because I'm going to obey him. It's sometimes difficult to backtrack from an impulse. An impulse, is born of the moment right then. And I was at the new Publix store the other day we have over here by our house, and it's really laid out well, and it's just, everything's so new and different. And I was just going there to buy milk, just milk. And as I walked over to where the milk is, they changed things up from the other stores. They put fresh baked donuts by the milk. And, it wasn't my fault. I didn't have anything to do with the fact that I brought milk home, but I brought home a dozen donuts that were just freshly made. I didn't intend that. That wasn't my point. But me and my wife were both glad that I acted on an impulse. Not every impulse we act on is always so innocent, but it wasn't planned. And so, if I had told my wife before I left, here's something I'm going to do. I'm going there for milk, and I'm not going to bring anything else home but milk. But I didn't do that. I just said, I'm going there. And there it was. And so many times we come out with more than we planned because of an impulse. And that's harmless most of the time. At that point, that was something good. But if we're capable of acting on impulses, then we must understand that an impulse comes from a thought. We see and we think. We hear and we think. But I must bring every thought into the obedience of Christ, because our thoughts lead somewhere. Now, this today may not affect very many people. It might be something that you could say, well, I'll put it in my pocket and look at it later. But I just want to spend this devotion with this one thought, that our thoughts have to be brought in line to the obedience of Christ. How do we do that? How do we bring a thought into the obedience of Christ? Well, we clean the filter out and we put the filter back where it goes. And the way we acknowledge that clean filter is we start each day saying, Lord, I'm asking you today to direct my steps. Lord, look at my path and lead me down the path of righteousness for your name's sake. It's saying every day when I get up, I'm going to put on a garment of praise. And I'm not going to put on a garment of doubt and self-pity, but I'm going to wear a garment of praise today. And if I can wear a garment of praise, then impulses are not going to control me. I may have one, but I'm going to defeat it, because the garment I'm wearing is a garment that puts Jesus Christ first. So everything I'm doing is filtered through him. Put on your garment of praise. Give God glory even when you're driving down the street, even when you're walking from the parking lot to the job or driving home. Find ways to incorporate praise into that day, and thank God for even the small things. And when we put God in that place, he will protect us and he will guide us, and we will be able to bring every thought into the obedience of Christ, and we will have a better day. Ponder it, think about it, apply it, and I promise you, it's going to help somebody stay on the right track. God bless you.